In 1889, workers demolishing a Victorian mansion in Yorkshire made a discovery that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Behind a false wall in the attic, they found a room. And in that room, scratches. Thousands of them, carved into every surface. The same three words over and over: "I am sane." What they found next was worse. A journal. Leather-bound, pages yellowed with age, and something else. Something that looked like dried blood. The entries spanned 7 years. 7 years of a man trapped in that room, watching his own family erase him from existence. This isn't a ghost story. This is something far more terrifying. Because the real monsters in this tale weren't supernatural. They were human. They were family. And what they did to protect their fortune would make the cruelest jailer seem merciful. Tonight, we're uncovering the true story of Blackwood Hall and the son who was buried alive within its walls. A story of greed, betrayal, and a kind of madness that had nothing to do with the man they called insane. Before we descend into the darkness of what happened at Blackwood Hall, let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered how far your own family would go to protect their secrets? How much would they sacrifice? Who would they sacrifice? Keep that question in mind. You're going to need it. Let's go back to 1875. Victorian England is at its peak. The Industrial Revolution has created a new class of wealthy families, and the Blackwoods are among them. Thomas Blackwood built his fortune on textile mills. Started with one factory in Leeds, and by 1870, he owned 17 across Yorkshire and Lancashire. We're talking about serious money here. The kind of wealth that builds legacies. The kind that makes men dangerous. Thomas had everything a Victorian patriarch could want. A beautiful estate he was building from the ground up. A wife from an old aristocratic family, giving him the social standing his money alone couldn't buy. And 3 children. Catherine, the eldest, 23 in 1875. Beautiful, accomplished, and already married to a minor lord. She'd done her duty. James, the middle child, 21. Charming, sociable, well-liked in society. But here's the thing about James. He was expensive. Gambling debts, bad investments. The kind of son who'd smile at you while bleeding your accounts dry. And then there was William Blackwood, 19 years old, quiet, studious, the one who actually cared about the family business. While James was spending money at London clubs, William was learning every aspect of the textile trade. He'd walk through the factories, talk to the workers, study the accounts. Thomas Blackwood was proud of William, or at least, that's what everyone thought. Here's what makes this story so chilling. By 1889, when those workers found that room, William Blackwood had been dead for exactly 14 years. Or at least, that's what the family told everyone. There was a grave with his name on it in the family plot. A lovely marble headstone. Fresh flowers placed there every Sunday by his grieving mother. But William wasn't in that grave. William was in the attic. Let's talk about the house itself, because Blackwood Hall wasn't just a home. It was a statement, a monument, and eventually, it would become a prison. Construction began in 1873. Thomas Blackwood wanted something that would outlast him. Something that would make the old aristocratic families look at him with respect instead of thinly veiled contempt. The estate was massive. 42 rooms, Gothic Revival architecture with Victorian excess, towers, turrets, elaborate stonework. The grounds stretched over 300 acres, gardens designed by the same landscape architect who'd worked on several royal estates. But here's what's interesting. In 1876, Thomas made some changes to the plans. specifically to the third floor, the attic level. The original architect had designed the attic as servant quarters and storage. Simple, functional. But Thomas insisted on modifications. He wanted a private suite of rooms built into the east wing of the attic, self-contained, soundproofed, with locks that could only be opened from the outside. The architect thought it was a safe room, protection from potential intruders. The architect was wrong. Those rooms were completed in early 1877. By March of that year, they had their first occupant. William Blackwood moved into the attic suite on March 15, 1877. He was 21 years old. He would never leave. So what happened? What could drive a father to imprison his own son? The answer is in the ledgers. In January 1877, William made a discovery. He was reviewing accounts from the mills, something he did regularly. He enjoyed it. The precision of numbers, the story they told about the business. But this time, the numbers were telling a story that didn't make sense. Money was disappearing. Not small amounts, we're talking thousands of pounds. Payments to suppliers that didn't exist. Orders for machinery that was never delivered. It was sophisticated, hidden in the complexity of running 17 factories. But William saw it. And here's the crucial detail. The signatures on the fraudulent orders were his father's, Thomas Blackwood's signature. Clear as day. William did what any loyal son would do. He went to his father. Private conversation in Thomas's study. William laid out the evidence, showed him the ledgers, the discrepancies, the forged orders. He expected his father to be shocked, angry, grateful that William had uncovered this before it destroyed them. Instead, Thomas went very quiet, looked at the ledgers for a long time. Then he looked at his son. And according to William's journal, which we'll talk about more in a moment, his father said something that changed everything. You weren't supposed to see this. Not, this is terrible. Not, who could have done this? You weren't supposed to see this. William didn't understand. Not at first. So he pressed, asked questions. Who was embezzling? How long had this been going on? Shouldn't they contact the authorities? That's when Thomas asked William a question. How much do you know about your grandfather? William's grandfather had died before William was born. All he knew was that his father had inherited a small textile mill and built it into an empire. Thomas corrected him. He'd inherited debt. The mill was bankrupt. Everything William had grown up with, everything the Blackwood name stood for, was built on a foundation of fraud. The suppliers, the contracts, the expansion. All of it, financed through an elaborate scheme of falsified accounts and embezzled money from investors who thought they were funding legitimate enterprises. The Blackwood fortune was a lie. And William, by uncovering the current fraud, was threatening to expose 40 years of carefully hidden crimes. William's journal describes what happened next in painful detail. We know this because the journal survived. It was found with his body. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. William told his father he needed time to think. That was his first mistake. He should have run, should have gone to the authorities immediately. But he was 21 years old, and Thomas Blackwood was still his father. Thomas agreed, suggested William take a few days at the hall, rest, consider the family. Think about what exposing this would do to his mother, his sister, his brother. The guilt was immediate. William wrote about it in his journal. The idea that his actions could destroy his mother's social standing, could ruin Catherine's marriage, could send his father to prison. So he stayed, and he thought. And while he was thinking, Thomas was planning. On March 14, 1877, the family physician, Dr. Edmund Hartley, came to Blackwood Hall. He examined William in Thomas's presence. This wasn't unusual. Dr. Hartley had been the family physician for years. William trusted him. The examination was brief. Dr. Hartley asked William about his sleep, his appetite, his state of mind. William, still wrestling with what to do about the fraud, admitted he'd been stressed, losing sleep, struggling with a difficult decision. Dr. Hartley nodded sympathetically, made notes. Then he asked William something odd. He asked if William heard voices, if he saw things that others didn't, if he believed people were conspiring against him. William laughed. Of course not. He was stressed, not delusional. Dr. Hartley made more notes, exchanged a glance with Thomas, then delivered his diagnosis. William was suffering from acute nervous disorder with paranoid delusions. It was a serious condition. Left untreated, it could become dangerous. To William himself and to others. William was confused. He tried to explain. He wasn't paranoid. He'd found evidence of fraud. Real evidence. He could show them the ledgers. Dr. Hartley's expression became pitying. Gently, he explained that this was a classic symptom. The belief that family members were criminals. The obsession with imaginary evidence. The inability to see reason. And here's where it gets truly horrifying. By 1877, Victorian England had very specific laws about lunacy. If a physician certified someone as insane, especially someone who posed a potential danger, the family had the legal right to confine them. For their own protection, of course. The next morning, March 15th, William woke up in the attic suite. The door was locked from the outside. Now, you might be wondering, didn't anyone question this? Didn't William's mother, his siblings, the servants notice that he'd vanished? This is where the Blackwood family's plan showed its true brilliance and its true cruelty. William didn't vanish, not officially. The story the family told was simple and believable. William's mental breakdown had been sudden but not unexpected. Dr. Hartley had apparently noticed signs for months. The obsessive behavior, the paranoid accusations, the sleeplessness. For his own safety, and for the sake of the family's reputation, William was being cared for in a private sanatorium, a discreet facility in Scotland that specialized in nervous disorders affecting young men of quality. These places existed. They were real, and they were where wealthy families sent their embarrassing problems. The family was devastated, of course, but they held their heads high. These things happened in the best families. Mental fragility, inherited weakness, nothing to be ashamed of, but certainly nothing to advertise. Catherine came home from London, red-eyed from crying. James looked appropriately somber. Their mother wore black, as if already in mourning. The servants gossiped naturally. But what could they say? They'd seen Dr. Hartley come and go. They'd heard William had been unwell. And the quality of the family's grief was unmistakable. Whatever had happened to young Mr. William, it was a tragedy. Letters arrived periodically from Scotland. Brief updates on William's condition. Always written in the same hand. Always sealed with the sanatorium's stamp. The family shared select details. William was as comfortable as could be expected. He had good days and bad days. The doctors were hopeful but cautious. No one was allowed to visit. William's condition made it inadvisable. The doctors insisted. Too much excitement could trigger an episode. The letters were forgeries, of course, written by Thomas himself or by someone he'd paid. The sanatorium existed, but William was never there. William was 40 feet above his family's heads, locked behind a door that only his father could open. Let's talk about the room itself. Because this wasn't a dungeon. That would have been too obvious, too cruel. And Thomas Blackwood needed to believe he wasn't a monster. The attic suite had 3 rooms, a bedroom, a sitting room, and a small bathroom. They were furnished. Not lavishly, but adequately. A bed, a desk, a chair, some bookshelves. The windows faced east, providing light, but they were barred. Decoratively, of course. Gothic Revival style. From the ground, they looked like architectural flourishes. From inside, they were what they were, bars. Food came 3 times a day, delivered by Thomas himself at first, and later by a trusted servant who'd been told William was dangerously violent and had to be kept sedated. The servant, a man named Albert Moss, believed he was helping to care for a madman. He had no idea he was complicit in imprisonment. William had books. His journal mentions this repeatedly. Thomas allowed him books, history, literature, even some scientific texts. It was a mercy, in Thomas's mind, a way to keep William occupied, comfortable. But here's what William didn't have: contact with the outside world. Any way to prove his sanity, any hope of escape. The journal is heartbreaking in its early entries. William writes about his attempts to reason with his father. Every few days, Thomas would visit. They'd talk. William would plead his case, would promise to keep quiet about the fraud, would beg just to be allowed to leave England, to start over somewhere else, to never speak the family name again. Thomas would listen. Sometimes he'd look sad. Sometimes he'd pat William's shoulder, tell him this was for the best, that someday William would understand, that the family had to be protected. Then Thomas would leave. The lock would click, and William would be alone again. The early journal entries are desperate but coherent. William documents everything: the dates, the conversations, the evidence he still remembers from the ledgers. He's building a case, preparing for the day when someone will listen. By 1879, 2 years in, the entries start to change. William begins to doubt himself. Not about the fraud. He knows that was real, but about whether it matters. About whether anyone will ever believe him. About whether he might actually be going mad, because surely no father would do this to a sane son. He writes about the sounds of the house beneath him: dinner parties, music, laughter, his brother's voice drunk and cheerful, his mother's directing servants. The normal life of a wealthy family happening 40 feet below his prison. He writes about holidays, Christmas, his birthday, days when he'd press his ear to the floor and try to hear them mention his name, try to confirm that he still existed in their minds, even as a tragedy, even as a shame. Sometimes he heard his name. Usually, he didn't. By 1880, William's journal entries become sporadic. Days go by without writing, then weeks. He mentions that he started losing track of time, that days blur together, that sometimes he wakes up and doesn't know if it's morning or evening, Tuesday or Saturday. This is what isolation does to the human mind. We're not built for it. We need contact, stimulus, variation. Without it, the mind begins to fray. William develops routines to stay anchored. He exercises, counts his steps, paces the 3 rooms, 52 steps, corner to corner. He knows because he's counted. Thousands of times, tens of thousands. He reads every book Thomas gives him, then reads them again and again. He mentions memorizing entire passages. Not intentionally. It just happens. When you have nothing else to fill your mind, everything leaves a deeper impression. He talks to himself. He knows this is a bad sign, writes about it with a kind of detached humor. But the silence is worse than the sound of his own voice. So he talks, carries on conversations, debates philosophy with imaginary friends, tells jokes to the empty room. In 1881, 4 years in, something changes. William stops begging, stops trying to reason with Thomas during his visits. Instead, he starts documenting, treating his father like a subject of study. The journal entries become analytical, cold. William describes Thomas's tells, the way his father won't quite meet his eyes, the way he fidgets with his watch chain when William mentions the family, the way he stays near the door, as if afraid William might somehow overpower him, despite the locked door between them. William writes, he knows what he's doing is wrong. That's what makes it unforgivable. If he believed I was truly mad, this would be mercy. But he knows. He knows I'm sane, and he keeps me here anyway. This realization seems to break something in William. Not his mind, his hope. The journal entries become darker. William writes about rage, about fantasies of escape, about what he'd do to his father if he could. These are disturbing passages, violent, specific. And here's what's tragic. These entries, if found during William's lifetime, would have proven Thomas right, would have justified the imprisonment. A man writing about violence towards his family, clearly unstable, clearly dangerous. William knows this, even writes about it. He's making me what he claimed I was. The prison is creating the prisoner. The diagnosis is creating the disease. In 1882, something happens. The journal doesn't specify what, but William's entries suggest that James, his brother, discovered the truth. William writes that he heard arguing, shouting, his brother's voice and his father's. The words were muffled through the floors, but the rage was clear. Then footsteps, coming up the stairs, up to the 3rd floor, to the attic. The door opened. For the first time in 5 years, someone other than Thomas and Albert entered. James stood in the doorway, staring at William. William doesn't record what they said to each other. He only writes, James wept. Then he left. The door locked behind him. He didn't come back. What happened? Did Thomas convince James that William was dangerous? That he had to be kept locked away for everyone's safety? Did Thomas threaten James? Offer him money? Promise him the inheritance that should have been William's? We don't know. We only know that James, after that visit, never tried to free his brother. And William never mentions him in the journal again. The entries from 1883 to 1884 are sparse. Sometimes weeks go by without writing. William mentions that he's run out of things to say, that his thoughts chase themselves in circles, that he dreams about the outside world and wakes up crying. He writes less about escape and more about endings. Not quite suicidal ideation, but a kind of exhausted resignation. How long can a man survive like this? Not physically. That's just the body. But how long can the self survive? The person you were. I don't know who I am anymore. In March of 1884, 7 years after his imprisonment began, William writes something that will haunt you. Today is my 28th birthday. No one remembered. No one came. I am a ghost haunting my own life. That's the last dated entry. The journal continues, but without dates. The handwriting deteriorates. Some entries are barely legible. Others are just single words, repeated over and over. Sane. 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 The scratches on the walls began during this period. We know because the later journal entries mention them. William writes about carving the words, using a nail he'd worked loose from the floorboards. scratching into the plaster, the wood, any surface he could reach. "I am sane. I am sane. I am sane." Over and over, thousands of times, covering the walls, a desperate mantra, a prayer, a curse. The final journal entry is undated. The handwriting is shaky but clear. It reads, "If anyone finds this, if anyone ever reads these words, know that I was not mad. I was not dangerous. I was inconvenient. I knew too much, and my family chose their fortune over my freedom. They chose their reputation over my life. Tell them. Tell everyone. The Blackwood fortune is built on fraud and murder. Because this is murder. Maybe not with a knife or poison, but murder nonetheless. I am 29 years old. I have been buried alive for 7 years, and I don't think I'm going to survive much longer. My name is William Blackwood. I was sane. I am sane. I will die sane. Remember me." William Blackwood died in that attic sometime in early 1884. The official story was that he'd passed away peacefully in the Scottish sanatorium. A private funeral was held. A grave was prepared. An empty coffin was buried. His body remained in the attic. Thomas Blackwood sealed the room himself. Brick by brick, he built a false wall, covered it with wallpaper, made it look like the room had never existed. The suite became storage, filed with trunks and old furniture stacked against the hidden wall. Thomas died in 1889. Heart failure, the doctors said, but the servants whispered that he'd become paranoid in his final years, that he'd hear scratching sounds from the attic, that he'd wake up screaming about locked doors. When the estate was sold after Thomas's death, the new owners decided to demolish the aging structure and build something more modern. That's when the workers found the false wall, found the room, found the scratches, found the skeleton of William Blackwood, still dressed in the clothes he'd worn 7 years earlier, slumped at his desk, his journal open in front of him. The scandal was enormous. The journal was authenticated. The fraud was investigated. The Blackwood fortune was revealed to be exactly what William had discovered it was, built on decades of embezzlement, falsified contracts, and stolen money. James and Catherine tried to distance themselves, claimed they hadn't known. The evidence suggested otherwise. James had visited William. Catherine had never questioned why her brother never wrote, never visited, vanished so completely from their lives. Dr. Hartley fled to France and died there 3 years later. Albert Moss, the servant, testified that he genuinely believed William was dangerous. He'd been told that if William ever escaped, he might kill the entire family. He'd been doing what he thought was right. That's what makes this story so terrifying. Not the isolation, not even the betrayal. It's how easily evil can masquerade as duty, as family loyalty, as doing what's necessary. Thomas Blackwood probably believed he had no choice. The fraud would have destroyed everything, sent him to prison, ruined 3 generations of family. What was one son's freedom against that? But here's the thing, it's always a choice. And Thomas Blackwood made his choice every single day for 7 years. Every time he walked up those attic stairs. Every time he locked that door. Every time he looked at his surviving children and pretended his other son was being cared for in Scotland. 7 years, 2,555 days, give or take. That's how long William Blackwood spent in that room. How many times did he count those days? How many times did he carve those words? I am sane. The Blackwood estate is gone now, demolished and replaced with housing. But there's a plaque, put up in 1894 by a victims' rights organization. It marks where Blackwood Hall once stood. and it bears William's final words. I was not mad. I was inconvenient. If this story disturbed you, good. It should. Because this isn't ancient history. This happened barely more than a century ago. And the mechanisms that allowed it, the social structures, the ability of the wealthy and powerful to hide their crimes behind closed doors and locked rooms, those haven't disappeared. They've just evolved. So here's what I want you to do. First, hit that subscribe button. Because we're going to keep uncovering these stories. The ones that get buried. The ones that powerful families don't want told. The truth that hides in the shadows of history. Second, drop a comment. Tell me what you think. Would you have had the courage William did? To confront the corruption? To risk everything for the truth? Or would you have looked the away? And third, and this is the most important one, pay attention to the locked doors in your own life, to the questions people don't want asked, to the family secrets everyone agrees not to mention. Because the worst thing about William Blackwood's story isn't that it happened. It's how easily it could happen again. Remember his name, William Blackwood. Remember that he was sane. Remember that he told the truth. And remember what it cost him. The scratches on those walls said, I am sane, thousands of times. This video is saying it one more time, so that William Blackwood is not forgotten, so that his 7 years in that room meant something. I'll see you in the next one, where we'll descend into darkness again, because that's where the truth lives, in the places no one wants to look. Until then, keep questioning, keep searching, and never, ever let anyone convince you that silence is the same as sanity.